Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome into your FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. It's Wednesday, so we've got the hottest truck tech news ready to go for you this morning with the one and only Alan Adler. Alan, we've got a really good show and a really good newsletter on tap for this week, too. We're going to start off with the show. Took you again on the road to Kansas City this time.
Yeah, and the Kansas City on the other side of the Missouri River, by the way, the one in Kansas. This is a visit that we made to Orange EV, which is, believe it or not, they've made more Class 8 electric trucks than anybody out there. That includes Daimler, Volvo, everybody like that. But what they make is yard tractors, also known as yard dogs. These are electric vehicles that essentially move trailers around distribution yards, and the larger version of their product can be used in ports. So they've got a nice lead in this area. They've got a fleet of roughly 1,100 trucks that they've built, electric trucks, since 2015. They have a real strong story on durability. 98% uptime for an electric vehicle, which is pretty impressive, compared to, say, 75% for a diesel version of the same truck. Now, yeah, they're more expensive up front, but the payback is pretty quick. And we spent some time with Kurt Nijens, who is the Chief Technology Officer and the co-founder of the company, former Ford Motor Company engineer, who started this company in 2,000 square feet and now has 440,000 square feet that they're building these trucks in. So we're in the plant. We're shooting video all the way through, and really, I think, hopefully bringing a pretty compelling story of how one company, still maybe a startup, private company, is doing pretty well at a very specific market.
So we've talked a lot about how yard dogs kind of make the perfect case for EV use because they are exactly what they sound like. They're confined to the yard. They only make these really small moves. You have a place where you can keep a consistent charging infrastructure and where you can really relatively quickly cycle through. One's on the charger, one's working. One's on the charger, one's working. Is that why we're continuing to see RGV be so successful? And are we maybe looking at others continuing to replicate the model, or do we think that they've kind of cornered the market on this one?
Well, I think others are trying it. I think Orange EV has a pretty good sized lead. They're working not just in their own space, but also in autonomy. Where next week we'll be talking with the folks at Outrider, where we visited in Denver. And they are using Orange EVs to make them autonomous vehicles in the yard. That's a whole nother story for next week. But as far as Orange goes, what they've done is they've got the whole package together. They make their own energy cabinets. 22 kilowatts of power in direct charging is not very much. It's nothing that you even have to reach out to the utility about. Your own electrician can put that in. And so what they're doing is trying to match up the need of the customer with how much power need they really have, rather than ordering in, say, a very large charging system. They use relatively small cabinets and, are able to charge, their 70 kilowatt charger basically can be used when the driver's on break. So they don't get any downtime. And some of these tractors really do run 24/7. The original one, which they provided to DHL back in 2015, is still out there on a 24/7 basis and still performing, which is pretty amazing. And DHL has announced a much bigger order. They want to convert their entire fleet of yard tractors to Orange EV. So it's a business that's got a lot of potential. It's not a very big market, though, Kayla. I mean, you're talking maybe 6,000 trucks a year. But if Orange gets, call it a third of that, that's a pretty good business. And, they're happy to go on from there, according to what Kurt Nijens told me.
So I know that we've talked a lot about different options for batteries in some of these trucks. And of course, weight is always a concern when it comes to that full commercial vehicle that is hauling outside of the yard. What does their battery technology look like? Is it pretty rudimentary, pretty standard, or is it they're doing something new?
Well, they get their cells from outside, but they build their own packs and have been doing that from the beginning because nobody was making packs when they started business. So they make their own. They use a lithium-ion phosphate technology, which is becoming quite popular now. They were a pioneer in using this. This is better thermal, more durable technology in terms of chemistry, battery chemistry. And so, they've been committed to that. They really didn't get a good close-up. They didn't want us to look at how they assemble their packs on camera, but they really do have, their own system for doing that. So they put the packs together. They do their own charging, cabinets. They do everything pretty much right there. Kurt jokingly says, we don't make our own tires, but we work very closely with the tire makers. And so he's got, 80 engineers roughly on staff there that are, split between mechanical, electrical, and other disciplines. But it is really pretty much everything is done there in Kansas City, in their plant. They're not doing that much. The cabs come in from the outside for the tractors, and then are customized. Then they go back out to be painted and so forth. But by and large, this is pretty much a from the ground up operation.
Love to see that. And I think it's exciting to see where they have the potential to go with this in the future. You mentioned that they're producing more electric Class 8s than Daimler or Volvo. When do the big guys start to catch up, if they start to catch up?
Well, I think, it's a use case issue. I mean, some of the pushback on electric trucks when we talk about, highway trucks is that, their use cases are somewhat limited because of the range. And as you mentioned earlier, range is not an issue for a yard truck because, when you need power, you just go over and, get recharged. That's harder for trucks that are out there on the road. And especially as we don't have very much public infrastructure to top off yet, we certainly have some installations going in, especially in California right now and that kind of thing. I don't think this number of 1,100 is going to remain a leading number for very long, Kaylee, but I think right now it's a claim that they can make and that it's backed by CalStart and some others. Again, based on use case, already, I guess you're looking at, we'll call it a fifth or so of all yard tractors. Oh, that's not true because, the 1,100 goes over several years. But there does seem to be a great deal of potential. As far as catch up on the others, I think you will see some more. We've seen that, Volvo has an electric version of the new VNL that they're going to make available and that sort of thing. But I think that, again, range at this point, it kind of restricts them to regional use and port use and things like that. So, we'll just have to see how that grows. It will grow, by the way. It might be stalled right now, but I think it will pick back up again. And I think that, but in this particular case, at least for this week's show and for today, we're focused on an area that makes a great deal of sense for electrification, and Orange EV's taken full advantage of that.
There you go. And you got to watch the show coming up later on this afternoon to get the full story there. Let's move on to the newsletter for this week before we wrap on up. Got some news about Hyzon Motors, who has been kind of holding on, and we've got an update on what the status of that is.
Well, Canada, they made some announcements earlier this week that they're going to leave the Netherlands, they're going to leave Australia. These are two markets that they had really focused on, truthfully, even over the U.S. When Hyzon went public 3 years ago as a SPAC, the thought was, by the CEO at that time, was that we came to the U.S. as a spinoff of the Horizon Fuel Cell Technology company in Singapore. We came here because the money was here. There was money to expand, and so that's why they, set up shop in Rochester, New York, in a former General Motors fuel cell operation, which they've since sold. But, now we come down to it, we find out that, well, we're going to focus on the U.S., Hyzon says, because, these other markets are sort of beginning to flag a little bit in terms of the support for fuel cells. I'm not sure how true any of that is, but the fact is that Hyzon has a relatively short runway even now. At the end of the first quarter, they had about $82 million in cash and equivalents. That won't take you very far in something that, you're trying to build out. So, they're going to focus here in the U.S. I mean, Parker Meeks, the CEO, is a very smart guy, comes out of McKinsey, was interim CEO when Hyzon ran into some problems with the SEC and others a few years ago, got them out of that trouble. But now, honestly, they are on the ropes, like so many companies that cannot raise money right now. There's only a handful that have really been able to sort of get through to the investment community. Hyzon has not had any success at that at this point. And so therefore, they're sort of, I originally said circling the wagons. I don't think that's exactly it. I think what it really amounts to is, cutting down the number of things they're doing so they can focus on one thing.
Got to really hone in on that focus if you want to survive in this pretty tough market. Alan, thanks for joining us this morning for this FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. Of course, we've got the show coming up later on this afternoon. You can head on over to freightwaves.com, click Truck Tech, and subscribe to get that newsletter in your inbox on Fridays.